My life was built on a foundation of predictability, and I liked it that way. I'm a graphic designer, a man who spends his days aligning pixels and ensuring brand consistency. My world was one of order, of carefully planned projects and predictable outcomes. This philosophy extended to my finances. I had a spreadsheet for everything, a detailed family budget, a retirement savings plan that was methodically dollar-cost averaging into low-cost index funds, and a timeline that showed, with comforting certainty, the exact year we would pay off our mortgage. My wife and I had built a good life on this principle of slow and steady. We weren't rich, but we were secure. Our happiness wasn't flashy. It was the quiet, deep-seated contentment of knowing we were building something solid, something lasting for our two kids. Then my friend, let's call him the prophet of profit, started preaching the gospel of Bitcoin. He was my oldest friend, the best man at my wedding, the kind of guy who radiated a frictionless confidence I had always admired and secretly envied. While I was building with bricks, he was building with lightning. He'd done well in real estate, but his latest and most fervent passion was cryptocurrency. To hear him talk about it was to witness a masterclass in seduction. We were at his annual summer barbecue, the smell of grilled steaks in the air, kids running through the sprinklers, and he cornered me by the cooler. He wasn't just talking about an investment, he was unveiling the future. He spoke of decentralization, of hedging against inflation, of a technological revolution that would mint a new generation of millionaires. He made my sensible 401k sound like I was putting my money in a shoebox under the bed. He pulled out his phone and showed me the app, the graph line that shot relentlessly upward. "Look at this," he said, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "This is 6 months. My initial investment is up 400%. My passive income from this now pays for his mortgage." He pointed the phone at me, the glowing green numbers feeling like a judgment on my own cautious, boring financial strategy. I was skeptical, of course. I'd read the headlines about the volatility, the scams, but this wasn't some anonymous stranger on the internet. This was my best friend, a man I trusted. He saw the doubt in my eyes and masterfully dismantled it. "This isn't gambling," he argued. "It's an asymmetric bet. The downside is limited, but the upside is life-changing. You're a smart guy, you understand risk management. Think of this as the ultimate diversification." The seed was planted. For the next few weeks, he'd send me articles, YouTube videos, and screenshots of his daily gains. The market was on a tear, and every day I stuck to my slow and steady plan felt like a day I was actively losing money, leaving it on the table for others to grab. The idea of accelerating our life plan was a powerful intoxicant. Paying off the house in 5 years instead of 15, fully funding the kids' college accounts before they even hit high school. It was a shortcut to the finish line, a way to leapfrog over all the years of patient, disciplined saving. Finally, I caved. I started small, investing an amount I told my wife I was comfortable losing. The process was slick, easy, gamified. And when that small investment jumped 20% in 2 weeks, the feeling was electric. It was effortless. I had done nothing, and yet I had made more money than a week's worth of meticulous design work. I called my friend to tell him. He laughed, a knowing, triumphant sound. "That's nothing," he said. "That's just the appetizer. See what I'm talking about? Now imagine if you had put in some real money." And just like that, the foundation of my predictable, orderly life began to crack. I was no longer content with slow and steady. I had tasted speed, and I wanted more. The initial success was a dangerous poison. It didn't just make me feel lucky, it made me feel smart, like I had a secret insight the rest of the world was too timid to see. My friend's voice became a permanent fixture in my head, a confident narrator guiding me toward financial glory. I started moving more money into Bitcoin, and then, on his advice, Ethereum. First, it was the money we had saved for a new family car. "Why let it sit there losing value to inflation?" my friend had argued, "when it could be working for you?" It was a compelling point, and when I showed my wife the initial gains, her nervousness was tempered by the undeniable reality of the rising balance on the screen. Next went a significant portion of our emergency fund, a sacrosanct pool of cash I had once considered untouchable. But in this new reality, the biggest emergency seemed to be not being invested enough. My life's financial rules, carved in stone over years of disciplined saving, were being rewritten on the fly. I was living a double life, projecting an image of the same old sensible planner to my wife, while secretly becoming a high-stakes trader, my moods dictated by the violent swings of the crypto market. Then came the phone call that would irrevocably alter the course of my life. My friend was buzzing with an almost manic energy. "This is it," he said, his words tumbling over each other. "The institutional money is coming in. The next leg up is going to be vertical. We have to get properly positioned. This is the moment that will define our lives." I asked him what he meant. I was already heavily invested, my stomach in a perpetual knot of excitement and fear. "Leverage," he said, the word hanging in the air with a potent gravity. "I'm taking out a personal loan. The interest rates are insanely low right now, like 6%. Bitcoin is doing that in a week. It's a no-brainer. It's free money. The bank is literally paying us to get rich." It sounded insane. It went against every fiber of my being. My entire financial philosophy was built on the principle of avoiding unnecessary debt, but my friend had an answer for everything. He called it a calculated risk. He framed it as a business decision. He made me feel like my caution was cowardice, that I was letting a once-in-a-generation opportunity slip through my fingers because of old-fashioned programming. He walked me through the entire process, even recommending a lender he had used. The allure was too strong. The visions of a debt-free life, of telling my wife she never had to worry about money again, were too powerful to resist. I went to the bank alone. I lied to my wife, telling her I was meeting a client. I signed the papers for a personal loan so large that the monthly repayment alone was more than our mortgage. The loan officer was congratulatory, telling me to enjoy my home renovations. The lie felt slick and easy. The moment the funds appeared in my bank account, my heart was pounding in my chest. This was it, the point of no return. Transferring that entire sum, a life-altering amount of debt, to the anonymous address of a cryptocurrency exchange was the most terrifying and exhilarating act of my life. I was no longer dabbling. I was all in, my entire financial future and my family's security staked on the wisdom of my friend and the continued upward trajectory of a digital asset I barely understood. For about 2 weeks, I was a king. The market surged. My portfolio, inflated by the massive loan, swelled to a number that seemed like a typo. It was an obscene amount of money, a figure I had never imagined I would see next to my name. My friend and I were ecstatic, calling each other daily, planning our triumphant early retirements. We were geniuses, pioneers who had seen the future and bent it to our will. Then one Tuesday, I woke up and the screen was red. "Just a healthy correction," my friend said confidently. "The weak hands are getting shaken out. We have diamond hands. We hodl." I repeated his words to myself like a mantra. But the red deepened the next day and the next. The correction was becoming a dip, the dip was becoming a slide, and the slide was becoming a terrifying, gut-wrenching, unstoppable crash. The crash was not a gentle slope, it was a cliff. Each morning I would wake up with a jolt of adrenaline and a sick feeling in my stomach, grabbing my phone before my eyes were even fully open. And each morning the number was lower, a brutal confirmation that the dream was dying. I watched, mesmerized in horror, as tens of thousands of dollars of my perceived wealth vanished in hours, then minutes. The portfolio that was supposed to be my family's salvation was now a digital crater, and at the bottom of it was the cold, hard, unyielding reality of the bank's loan. It was all gone. The profits, my initial investment, the emergency fund, the car money, and every single cent of the loan. All of it had been vaporized in the market's collapse. I was worse than broke. I was massively in debt with absolutely nothing to show for it. My first call was to my friend, the prophet. I was desperate for his guidance, his unshakable confidence. I needed him to tell me this was all part of the plan, but the man who answered the phone was not the swaggering visionary I knew. His voice was thin, strained. The easy bravado was gone, replaced by a hollow echo of his former self. "Just hold on," he mumbled. "It's a bear market, it'll come back eventually." There was no conviction in his words. There was no secret strategy. I realized with a chilling clarity that he knew nothing more than I did. He wasn't a prophet. He was just another gambler who had been riding a winning streak. He was just as terrified and just as lost as I was. After that, his calls became shorter. His texts went unanswered. He was avoiding me, ashamed or unable to face the man he had led over the cliff's edge. My mentor, my guide, my best friend had vanished, leaving me completely alone to face the consequences he had helped create. And the consequences arrived with the punctuality of a Swiss train. The first loan repayment notice came in a crisp, cheerful-looking envelope. The amount due was a number that made me feel physically ill. My designer's salary, once a source of pride and security, was now laughably inadequate. There was simply no way to cover our mortgage, our regular bills, and this new, monstrous debt. The spreadsheet that had once been my source of comfort was now a document of doom, a mathematical testament to how thoroughly I had ruined us. There was no more hiding. I had to confess to my wife. It was the hardest conversation of my life. I laid it all out, the full extent of my investments, the secret loan, the total and catastrophic loss. I watched her face as she processed the information, her expression shifting from confusion to shock, and then settling into a look of cold, quiet fury that was far more terrifying than screaming would have been. She didn't cry. She just stared at me, her eyes filled with a terrifying mixture of anger and a deep, profound disappointment. "You didn't just lose our money," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "You lied to me, you made a decision that affects this entire family, and you did it behind my back because you trusted him more than you trusted me." She was right. I had broken the fundamental rule of our partnership. I had treated our shared life like my own personal casino. The atmosphere in our home became toxic. The air was thick with unspoken resentment. Every conversation was a minefield. We started sleeping in separate rooms, a physical manifestation of the emotional chasm that had opened between us. My children, sensitive to the oppressive tension, became quiet and withdrawn. The happy, predictable home I had worked so hard to build had become a cold, silent prison of my own making. I had gambled my family's security on the advice of a friend, and now I was bankrupt in every way that mattered, financially, morally, and emotionally. The immediate aftermath was a brutal exercise in triage. We were financially hemorrhaging, and we had to stop the bleeding. The first things to go were the luxuries, which we quickly realized were just necessities we had taken for granted. We canceled the streaming services, the gym memberships, the kids' music lessons. The family vacation we had planned for the summer was, of course, out of the question. Explaining to an 8-year-old why we couldn't go to the beach anymore because of Daddy's mistake with the computer money was a unique form of exquisite torture. It wasn't enough. The loan payment was a black hole that sucked up any and all discretionary income. We sold our second car, a reliable SUV that was fully paid off. I watched my wife hand the keys to a stranger, her face stoic, and I felt a wave of self-loathing so intense it almost brought me to my knees. To make ends meet, I took on a second job. After my 9-to-5 design job, I would eat a hurried dinner in my car and then spend my evenings and weekends delivering takeout meals. I was constantly exhausted, running on fumes and cheap coffee, my life reduced to a frantic cycle of work and sleep. I was a ghost in my own home, interacting with my kids mostly through brief goodnight kisses when I stumbled in late at night. The relationship with my friend was dead. I saw him once at the grocery store. We made eye contact for a brief, awkward moment before he quickly turned and walked down another aisle. The man who was my brother, who I had trusted with my entire future, was now just a stranger who couldn't bear to look at me. The betrayal was a bitter pill, but as the grueling weeks turned into months, my anger at him began to fade, replaced by a harsh, unflinching anger at myself. He hadn't forced me to take out the loan. He hadn't clicked the buy button. My greed and my ego had done that. I had been so desperate for a shortcut that I had ignored every red flag, every instinct that told me this was wrong. The turning point came one night around 2 a.m. I was sitting in a dimly lit parking lot, waiting for another food order to pop up on my phone. I was bone tired, my car smelling of a dozen different kinds of greasy food. I was scrolling through old photos on my phone and landed on one from a year earlier. It was a picture of my wife and me smiling on a simple hiking trip. We weren't rich, we weren't on an exotic vacation, but we were happy, we were connected, we were a team. I looked at that photo and realized the monumental scale of my stupidity. I had taken that peace, that simple, profound happiness, and I had gambled it away. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I was done with the shame and the blame. All that mattered now was the work of putting things right. The next morning, I sat down with my wife. I didn't apologize again. She was tired of my apologies. Instead, I laid out the new spreadsheet. It wasn't a get-rich-quick plan. It was a get-out-of-debt-slow plan. It was a 5-year roadmap of brutal austerity, extra shifts, and zero luxuries. I showed her exactly how we could climb out of this hole together. I told her I understood if she couldn't trust me anymore, but I was asking her for a chance to be her partner again, not just a liability. I saw a flicker of the woman I married in her eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a willingness to try. It was the first glimmer of hope I'd had in months. The journey since that day has been the hardest of my life. Our life is stripped down to the bare essentials. The debt is a constant presence, a long shadow that will follow us for years. But our house is no longer a silent war zone. We talk, we plan, we work as a team. The trust between us is fragile, like a piece of pottery glued back together, but it's there. I'm slowly, painstakingly rebuilding it with every paycheck I earn, every honest conversation we have, every promise I keep. I learned a devastating lesson about the true meaning of wealth. I had chased the fluctuating price of Bitcoin, convinced it held the key to happiness, and in the process I almost lost everything of actual value. My wife, my family, my integrity, and my peace of mind. I'm not a crypto millionaire. I'm a cautionary tale. I'm a man paying a very high price for listening to a friend instead of listening to his own better judgment. But I am also a man who is, for the first time in a long time, on the slow and steady path back to solid ground. You've heard my story, and now I want to hand the microphone over to you. What would you say if you could add your voice here? Share your thoughts, your lessons, or even your own story in the comments, and let's see how many people can find strength in one another's words.